We love to bring you experts in this field who've done this themselves and who are currently working on this journey and helping other people to do the same. And today is no exception. We're going to be talking with Purdeep Sangha all about how to become the complete man in business and in life. And for those of you who do not know Purdeep Sangha is the world's leader in complete strategic advising. He is widely known as the strategist for businessmen, and he teaches men how to become the complete man. His personal mission is to help men grow their businesses massively, increase their personal fulfillment in life, and improve their relationships with their wife and their kids. He's the founder behind the movement of men becoming mindful alpha males, men who experience complete victory and have it all. As an award-winning author, entrepreneur, speaker, podcaster, business coach, husband, and father, Purdeep knows exactly how tough it can be to balance a successful business with a happy family. After studying and working with some of the most successful men around the globe, Purdeep shows men the neuroscience behind becoming limitless. Purdeep, it is a pleasure to have you here, my friend. Thank you so much.
Hey, Brandon, I appreciate you having me.
So the name of this episode today is How to Become the Complete Man in Business and in Life. And I work in sales, so I work with a lot of different people. Our audience, a lot of them work in sales. They work in business of some sort, whether they're a leader or whatever it may be. And I met an individual the other day, and this guy seemed to have it all, right? He pulled up into the parking lot in a brand new Maserati SUV. And he gets out, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I can probably learn a lot from this guy, right? Obviously, he's got things going well for him. He walks in, and through conversation, through talking with him, I learned that he's going through a divorce. He's unhappy in his life. He's not happy with his fitness. He's not happy with his relationships, but he's got his money in check, right? He's got one piece of the pie on lock. Now, you mentioned that it is possible to have an extraordinary personal life while running a successful business. So with people like the example that I just gave you, what is generally the disconnect that you find between people who have success in one or two of those areas?
Yeah, I think the big disconnect is what we're taught and who we're taught by. And especially with social media these days, we always are constantly comparing ourselves to other people out there, whether that's men and women. Surprisingly enough, if you take a look at it, there's women are feeling this even more than men right now, especially younger women, when they take a look at social media. But basically, we're taught that we have to live a specific type of life. And for the majority of Western society, it's based on, you can say, finances. It's based on the size of your house. It's based on the vehicle that you drive. And very little emphasis is given to the family unit, is given to the quality of the relationships that you have with your spouse or with your children. In the US alone, for example, over 50% of children are being raised without full-time fathers. It's an epidemic. It's something that is massively impacting Western society. And if you take a look at the longest living human beings on the planet, these people have been studied. A lot of them are from smaller tribes or villages, for example, in Italy or South America or Costa Rica. They'll live to 90 years old, over 100 years old. And one of the key things that has led them to that is having quality relationships. And so what we do here in Western society is we take a look at money and all the fame, but we don't necessarily take a look at relationships and everything else. And if I could just add to that, there's one quote that I have in my book where it was an old saying that basically when you come across a man who has a lot of money, one of the big things that pops up is, well, is he happy, right? Others are constantly asking that. But when you come across a man who is happy, very rarely do you say, yeah, but is he rich, right? That question doesn't really come around that often. So that's just how we need to approach the situation in life, because if we approach it from a holistic perspective, we'll be a lot happier and we'll be a lot more successful as well.
That is very true, my friend. And I will say I've met a lot of people who've had money who weren't happy, right? And I've met a lot of people without money who I feel like there's like almost a ceiling on the level of happiness that you can experience without money. I think it's a very significant part of life to at least have a solid foundation there. Mm-hmm. And obviously you can't just have that one area though. Like you just said, with social interactions and relationships and the importance of them with people around the world who are centenarians living to over 100 years old, these individuals have their ikigai, right? They've got their purpose that they're living. They've got these interactions. They keep themselves fit. I like to talk about the tide that raises all boats, right? And if we look at our life in the 5 different areas, like our emotions, finances, fitness, relationships, and spirituality, would you say that relationships is the tide that raises all the other ones, or is there one that trumps relationships when it comes to being the complete man or the complete human being in general?
Absolutely. So it is a part of a relationship, but it's a relationship you have with yourself. So it's the inner relationship that you have that raises all tides, because you are the catalyst for everything. And it all starts from within. So if you can raise your emotional standards, your spiritual energy, for example, your skill level, your growth, everything else around you shifts according to that. So that is a core concept of the complete man. Is the complete man is complete from within, not necessarily externally. A complete man can be complete and still not have a big house, still be possibly struggling for money, but you still feel good about yourself in terms of who you are as a man. That raises all tides. So regardless of your external situations, if you focus on yourself internally, that is the easiest way to get everything else you want in life externally: the relationship, the money, the job, the career, the business, or whatever else you're looking for.
That is super fascinating. Okay, let me ask you this. Who are the people that you enjoy working with the most? Like, what do these people do for a living?
Well, most of them are entrepreneurs. I do work with, so they own their businesses, or they are CEOs or executives of businesses. I love working with men who know that they want to do things differently and are motivated to, because there's a lot of guys out there that are not telling themselves the truth, and they're resistant to change, they're resistant to growth, they're resistant to doing something different. I don't have fun with those guys anymore. I used to in the past work with, when I first started my advisory firm, I would take anybody because I was like, okay, the money, right? And I would take anybody on. But after that, I was just, when I didn't have that need anymore, I was very selective, and I choose to work with men who want to have everything that they want in life, and are willing to do what they need to do to get there.
When these men approach you and they say, Purdeep, I really need your help. I really need you to help me out with my life right now. This is where I am. This is where I want to go. What do these individuals, because I'm guessing they don't come to you and they say, listen, I want you to help me with my relationship with myself, right? Most of the time, I'm sure they don't say that. So what do they believe they need when they approach you looking to work with you?
More money, a better business, a better career. That is ultimately the gate to, I would say, 90% of the men that I work with. I tried in the past to, you could say, our marketing strategy to talk about all the other stuff, and that failed miserably. And that failed miserably because even though men would acknowledge that they want a better relationship, or they want to have more time with their kids, again, they get sucked back into the social norms, which is all about financial status, right? Or career status or business status. So that is the key, you can say, crux for most guys. And then we open it up to all the other conversations.
Okay. So you're working with this individual now for the first time. They want more money. They want to build a business because that's what they believe is going to, fill the gap that they have within themselves. What is the very first thing that you'll do with these individuals? If you have one session with them, where do you generally begin on your work?
So I basically want to know why. Why do they want to have more money? What is their ultimate lifestyle that they want to have? What vision do they have for their life? And ultimately work backwards. And then a big part of this, and this is a big question that a lot of guys have when I ask them, is, well, what do you want to feel when you have, if you're making $10 million now a year? How do you want to feel on a regular basis? Tell me 3 to 5 emotions that you want to feel on a regular basis. Now, you don't have to spit them out right now. Take 10 minutes, think about it. Some guys will say, hey, I want to have passion, I want to have excitement. Some other guys are, I want to have peace, I want to have content in my life. Whatever those emotions are, it's important, because ultimately everything we do is based on emotions. We want to feel a certain way. And if we identify how we want to feel, then we can identify what kind of lifestyle will enable us or create the best scenario for us to feel and nurture those emotions. So I had an example. A gentleman once said, hey, look, he was making 10 million and his goal was to hit 100 million. Young guy too, very brilliant. And I asked him why he wanted to make $100 million. And we worked backwards. We were talking about the emotions. And one of his core emotions was peace. And I said, okay, so you're making $10 million a year right now in your business. How much stress do you have? And he said, quite a bit. So, well, how much stress do you think you're going to have if you're making 100 million? He's like, probably more than 10 times that. I said, yeah. So how much peace are you going to have in your life? And no, that clicked for him because he was working towards this massive business, not even really knowing why. But when he identified that, then we could restructure his goals and say, okay, maybe you don't need to make $100 million. Maybe you can make 15, but restructure how your business is and how your lifestyle is. And you're going to have those emotions. You're going to feel great about yourself. So it's important to start with the finish line and work backwards. Now,
that is so interesting.
Yeah,
so,
there's one caveat, sorry, is it's never perfect, right? It's not a straight path in terms of getting to the finish line. There's always going to be challenges. So be prepared for that.
Yes, absolutely. And we talk a lot about emotions on this show. And I think it's incredible how you take these external goals of wanting more, wanting a bigger business, wanting more money, and then you relate that immediately back to emotions. And I love that question, what are the 3 to 5 emotions that you want to feel? Everyone listening right now, think to yourself, what emotions do I want to feel more on a daily basis? Right? Because generally, in order to feel something, in order to consciously feel something and intentionally feel something, you have to be intentional about what you want to feel. Like when I work with people who are just down, they're anxious a lot, they go through bouts of depression. Well, I ask them, what emotions are you practicing on a daily basis? And they say, well, exactly those emotions. And when you ask that question, what do you want to feel? It opens up like a whole new world of possibility. And okay, so now that someone has pinpointed the emotions that they want to feel more of, they want more peace, they want more exuberance, maybe they want more enthusiasm, confidence. What's the next step generally look like for you after they write down the emotions that they want? Do you have like a system that you guide people through for that?
Yeah, the next part is what kind of lifestyle do they want, and what kind of lifestyle will support those emotions. So that could be, hey, look, I want to be married, I want to have 2 kids, or I am already married, but I'm in a challenging relationship, or maybe I love my spouse, but the passion isn't there. And that's a core part. And surprisingly, well, actually, it's not surprising to me, but for a lot of people is guys want a great relationship. They want to have the passion and the love just like women do. So all of these things fit in. So we create basically a vision around that. And then we work backwards from that to say, what kind of career or what kind of business will support that? And the reason why we do that backwards is because most guys will jump into a career in business hoping that it will create the lifestyle they want. And they realize it's not creating the lifestyle they want. Their business or the career is actually dictating a lifestyle that is not in line with what they envisioned or what they truly wanted, or maybe they haven't even thought about it. So we work backwards systematically, and that works out fairly well.
I love that process. I like how you deconstruct the end goal down to the different actions and things that actually need to be done in order to make that end goal a reality. You're very knowledgeable about this. Obviously, you've wrote a book about this. You're constantly being interviewed. You coach and you have many clients. Like, where did this all begin for you? What even got you interested in this world of personal development and this world of improvement and living a better life? Where did this begin for you?
Wow, I would say it began at a very young age. I was fortunate enough so my parents were immigrants from India and came here with next to nothing. And my dad was a very interesting gentleman in terms of a very masculine man. He was in the Indian police force. He didn't have any formal Western education. So my parents basically just grew up, started working on an orchard, physical labor. And I grew up on an orchard, pretty much. I was born and raised on an orchard as long as I can remember. My parents would put my brother and I in an apple bin. And I grew up in a very mindful environment. So around nature, sometimes I would spend the entire day in nature by myself with nobody around. And my dad eventually bought his own orchard. My parents bought their own orchard. My dad also was an awesome dad, but he also struggled with alcoholism. And that was a challenge because it was kind of a love-hate relationship. I would see this amazing sober father, like awesome. He would share his emotions with us. He was such just a masculine presence, but had that tenderness to him. And he taught me that it's okay to cry. He taught me it's okay to be emotional as a man. On top of that, my grandfather was also in the Indian British Army for 3 decades, immigrated over to Canada. And he was also a very spiritual man. he taught me about spirituality. He taught me all the things because his father, my great-grandfather, was a spiritual teacher in India for 50 years. So he had a lot to teach me, and I had a lot to learn, and I didn't even get a fraction of that. But I learned this, you can say, these dichotomies of life, these spectrums of life that we talk about, from one end of the spectrum of war to spirituality, to masculinity to femininity, to having an awesome dad to a sober, a drunk dad that I was completely afraid of. All of these dynamics that I learned as a young age. And on top of that, what ended up happening was, in elementary school, I can't remember exactly what grade, I was 5, 6, or 7. We had a substitute teacher that came and on the chalkboard wrote a bunch of words, circled them, and connected them with dots, and said, "This is a mind map." And at that time, this wasn't, we're talking about 30 years ago. And this concept wasn't really around in North America at that time. It actually started in Europe. And I said, this is interesting. It's something at that moment just spurred inside of me. So I started research at that time in libraries. What the concept of mind map, there wasn't really much information about it, but then I started to get into studying people like Einstein and Leonardo da Vinci, got into brain science at that time. So what we consider neuroscience right now, or brain hacking, and started to go from there. I was able to utilize my brain in a different way. I would go into classroom, like my tests, not have to study and score 100%. I had a photographic memory, for example. I can remember a 500-page textbook word for word.
Wow.
So all of this stuff I started to learn at a young age in high school, you could say early high school, that I applied. And that got me into neuroscience and neuropsychology. Long story short, I used that throughout my entire life, through my personal life, my corporate career, in business. And that's ultimately what is enabling me to help other men, is because the business side is the easy part. The business strategy, the tactics, the techniques, that's the easy part. But how we manage our emotions, how we understand our brain, how we make decisions, how we execute effectively, that is the tougher part. And it can be mastered. It takes some time. But this is where I wanted to shortcut it for men and take my 25 years of studying this information and applying this and condensing it for men out there. So that's my true passion. That's what I do.
Wow, what an interesting background. It's so cool that you had those role models in your life who studied with spiritual teachers in India. Like that, I mean, such an awesome opportunity, and that has just built up to where you are now, helping other people with these same things. I find it very fascinating when you bring up neuropsychology, neuroscience. We don't really talk about things like that on this show too much. When you first dove into this world of brain hacking and into these different topics, what are some simple strategies that you picked up that you continue to use back then, and still to this day you continue to use these things you learned when you first discovered these fields? What are some common things that you'll still use to this day?
Absolutely. And I think by far the biggest skill that I learned that allowed me to have a competitive advantage and actually have a better life overall is the ability to learn. And very, very few institutions, academic institutions, or any institution in general, teach you how to learn. Even in school, they don't teach you how to learn, which is really interesting when you think about it. So that would be the best skill for anybody to learn. I apply principles of memory, for example. How do you remember things? So one of the biggest things is attention. You have to pay attention to the thing that's in front of you, being present in the moment, because that's where you consume the most information and you are able to focus your energy. And so that there's I could go all over the place here, but I would say one of the core concepts of learning, or just anything else in life, is you have the two most important resources that you have is your focus and your energy. If you can focus on what's in front of you and put all your energy into it and maximize that, you're going to get the best results possible. That's where your maximum power is. But we're trained today to not focus on things. We're trained by social media, by technology, by marketing, all these other things that are trying to capture our attention. So we need to learn how to focus, and we need to learn how to maximize our energy. These things help with learning, but they help with all these other aspects of life. So that's, in all honesty, that is one big thing from a neuroscience perspective, is where do you put your attention? And how do you remove distractions? That's a very practical way to do things. Attention is one thing. Active engagement, for example. If you're going to be sitting in front of someone trying to learn in a lecture, it's not going to work that well. You have to be actively engaged. So even if someone is talking, write down questions for yourself. Write down, make diagrams, do whatever it is. That is getting your brain going. So this is very important for learning. The other one is what we call error correction. So tests, although as much as we hate them, quizzes in school, they are actually very, very effective. And not necessarily the tests at the end of the course, but you should be testing yourself every day. If you're trying to learn something, just ask yourself some questions, write them down, and see what the answer is. And if you're correct, your brain will actually say, okay, check, this is correct. If you're not correct, your brain will say, okay, what is the correct answer? That's actually how you learn. So that's very important. And one of the other important elements is consolidation. So I call it the Lego principle, is try to connect what you're learning right now with something else in your life. And if you connect more things in your life, so if you're trying to understand financials, well, financials can be boring, but if you connect it to your sales strategy or something else, then you're more likely to actually learn it. You're more likely to be interested in it. And so that's going to boost up your memory. That's going to boost up your consolidation levels in terms of bringing all these concepts together. There's a term out there that we talk about, which is, if you take a look at a bunch of dotted lines, everybody will see the dotted lines. But your goal isn't to see the dotted lines, it's to connect the dotted lines. That's where consolidation comes in. And another important aspect, I would say by far the biggest or most important technique that I've used throughout my entire life, and I teach everybody else, is visualization. That is, if anybody could do anything to improve their life, if anybody could do anything to improve their performance, their skill level, knock it out of the park, it's visualization. I used that at a young age when I was weight training, playing sports, in school. It is absolutely powerful.
What will you visualize? So if someone's sitting down and they're like, okay, I've got 5-10 minutes for this each day, what are you recommending to people that they spend time and see in their mind, in their theater of imagination?
Well, first of all, is to have a goal. So what is your goal for the day? So having a goal every single day is important. Or maybe it could be a couple of goals. It's important because your brain is actually a goal-driven organ. So it will work based on a goal. So if you give it a goal, it will work towards that. It will constantly try to predict and solve problems. That's what your brain does. Two particular things: predict and solve problems. So what is it predicting or solving problems for if it doesn't have a goal? It will create something else. It will find somebody else's goal, or maybe or a goal you don't want, worry or anxiety, right? These are all things. So have a goal and then visualize that goal happening. Visualize the steps or the activities that you need to do to make that goal happen. So it's that if you have an important meeting or presentation, visualize yourself knocking it out of the park. Visualize yourself around the boardroom table or standing up and the people around the boardroom table. Visualize yourself, your energy levels. Visualize yourself making the crowd or the attendees basically laugh or engage them. Visualize if they ask you a tough question, how you're going to respond. Because it's basically programming your brain and your body to be able to react more effectively when the time comes.
Wow. Absolutely incredible. And let me tell you, I have a gratitude ritual that I do each day. And a part of that is being grateful for things that haven't even happened yet. So a lot of it is visualization. And I talk about this all the time, but the feeling that you have when you come out of even 5 minutes of visualization, just sitting there, seeing something in your head, creating an image or a video in your mind, the feeling is like a sense of like catharsis in a way. It's like a lightness, like an airiness. And it's like a huge way that I start my day. Like what else do you do personally, ritual wise, that it's a non-negotiable for you? Like every single day, you must do this. You don't think twice about it. You just do it because you know it gets you results.
Spend time with my kids in the morning. So my kids are 8 years old and 6 years old. That's the first thing I do is crawl into bed and snuggle with them for about 15 minutes each. That is a non-negotiable for me. Then I spend time meditating. So I meditate, and you can say spiritual reasons for that. There's also scientific reasons for that. 12 minutes a day can change your neuroplasticity. So that's been shown, that's been proven. So that's very important. It calms your mind and allows you to actually train your brain to be more focused and have more attention, and be more intentional, which is very, very important, especially these days, as I mentioned, with technology. And then I'll exercise. Those are the non-negotiables for me. And then I goal set, because that is important. And I also do energy work before I goal set. So Qigong, for example, or some other type of energy practices where I get my energy flowing, Tai Chi. These things, basically, there's a lot of history behind it, but basically you're getting movement and you're getting the energy flowing through your body.
So you're blocking out a good hour each day for you to get this self work done for yourself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. By the time I'm ready to go, it is probably about 2 hours. So I don't, not everybody has to do that, but that is my routine. That's what gets me going. That's what gets me set up for the day so that I can perform at my best.
And is there a specific type of meditation that you like to use, something that you found through years of trying it? Is your visualization packed into your meditation? Like, what does that look like for those process-oriented people listening right now?
Well, the great thing about meditation is there's so many different things that you could do, even with visualization. As a child, I used to do a lot of walking, visualization, and meditation, like hours at a time. And it was something that I would say one of the things that trained my brain very well. So walking meditation is great. I don't do that much that now, but so there's guided meditations, which you could get audio tape. Sorry, I shouldn't say audio tapes, apps. So that will actually take you through a guided meditation, which I recommend for beginners because it's a lot easier for them. I also do basically free meditation, which is basically I try to empty out my brain and my thoughts as much as possible. And when I get to a certain stage, and if you can get into that gateway, a moment where your brain can actually get through, and I'm going to say, a cosmic gate, a dimensional gate, that's when things open up and it's like being in a completely different dimension.
Wow.
And so that type of meditation is one of my favorites. It's not always possible because you have to get into that gateway, but and visualization is important too. And I try to spend, and the best times for me and for most people, because our brain waves are more likely to be in that theta alpha range, is right after you get out of bed and right before you go to sleep, because you're more prone to be in that. I like to do it when I'm completely drowsy. Like first thing, if I can, before I even spend time with my kids, if I can get into that state, into meditation before, then I'll jump into it. I'll know if I'm there, and then I'll get right into it, because then I can go into this completely different zone.
So if you're feeling drowsy, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No. If you're feeling sleepy, if you're drowsy, like I use that to my advantage. That's when I will actually meditate, because I know I can get into this zone of just emptying my thoughts and it's a higher chance of me getting through that gateway.
Absolutely incredible. Years ago, I started transcendental meditation, and I did it for probably a good month and a half. Now I just have a different routine, but I stopped doing it because I would fall asleep during the transcendental meditation. And I recently actually talked with somebody, and I mentioned this to him, and he's like, well, that means that your body needed more sleep. It was your way for your body to tell you, hey, you need to get more rest. And he's like, and that was actually a good thing for you. Mm-hmm. And I was like, very interesting. I never thought about it that way. I mean, we could talk about this stuff for a while. There's a couple more things I want to talk to you about. The first thing is I've heard your concept around goals and the gap being where you are now, where it is you want to go. And you hear from a lot of people, you got to have goals. You got to know where you're headed. You got to be goal oriented. But then you hear from other people, just try to be in the moment now. Don't as much think about the future. Don't think about the past. Be in this present moment. Because after we achieve a goal, what do? We go after and set a new goal and achieve that one and achieve that one. And essentially, we're waiting to be happy until we have this end result or this outcome that we've been going for. So in your opinion, what is the perfect balance between having something that you're going for and the importance of goals, but also finding peace and quote unquote fulfillment in this moment that we're in now?
Well, you just exactly, you said it, it's balance. So from my perspective, again, from my personal experience and our research, is having a goal is important. It's absolutely critical. And it's important to know where you want to go in life. And the second part is enable from a neuroscience perspective, from a brain perspective, it aligns your brain and aligns your thoughts, your emotions, your spiritual energy, and your physical energy with your goal. If you think about it, the reason why a lot of people aren't able to achieve what they want is because they're not aligned in any one of those four areas. The goal allows you to be more aligned, gives you greater chances. But on the other side is you have to be in the present moment. That is the only time that actually exists. That is the only time that you have your maximum power in life. You do not have power a minute from now. You don't have power a minute that just passed. You have power right now. So here's what I tell people is you have to have a goal, but it should not be all consuming. Meaning that the challenge with people who have goals is that they're constantly thinking about their goals when they're in this present moment, meaning that they're consumed by their goals. If I'm here right now thinking, I got to make $10 million tomorrow, I got to make $10 million tomorrow, I'm not going to do what I need to do right now to actually get me there. So having a goal is important, but not being consumed by the goal is even more important. So if you have a goal and you do what you need to do in the present moment to get there, that is the most important thing. And I talk about the concept of the gap. The gap is important because it creates discomfort. And the gap is basically the distance between where you are and where you want to be. That's it. There's a principle behind it from a brain perspective is that anytime you have a gap, it actually creates a desire and motivates you to do something different. It motivates you to grow. But if you're consumed with the gap and the distance of the gap, or, hey, I'm not closing that gap, I'm not getting there fast enough, it demotivates you. So there's always that balancing act in life. And that goes for how we operate from a mental perspective, cognitive perspective, emotional perspective, and a spiritual perspective.
I love that. And you talked about daily goals. You talked about the importance of having a goal. And you talked about the importance of the balance between being in the present moment while still having that destination you're going towards, but not being all consumed by it. I love that. Now, how often do you reflect, and how often do you recommend to other people to remind themselves of their goal? Because we can get caught up in the present moment, right? Like, how often do you think about that end goal, and not so that you're not consumed by it, but you're still reminded of it?
I always think about that end goal. I'm always going to that end goal, and I've trained myself to be able to go there and not be consumed by it. But I'm always thinking about it because I always reflect, what do I need to do today in this moment, in this minute, to be able to get to that end goal? But that end goal could just be for the day. Sometimes I just have a goal for the day to be as joyful as I can. Like, that is the one goal that I have. So I'm constantly reflecting and being like, what I'm doing right now, is that empowering me to get to that goal, or is it not? So it could be something very simple. I'm constantly reflecting on that. That's just how I've trained my brain. I don't always recommend it to everybody, because if you're constantly reflecting, sometimes if you haven't trained your brain to be not non-critical, because you can reflect, but a lot of people are critical on themselves. And so that can hold you back. So I reflect not from a perspective of being critical, but from a perspective of learning and growth. And there's another thing that you talked about that is very, very important when it comes to just in life, but also goals as well, is appreciation and gratitude. So if you can be appreciative of what you have currently, and love what you have currently, and be grateful for it, then having a goal just adds to that. Again, the challenge is for people that have goals and aren't grateful for what they have currently, because then they always feel a state of lack, and that's not what you want.
So insightful, man. Oh my God, I absolutely love it. It's giving me chills just thinking about it. Let's talk about relationships. Okay. How long have you been married now?
Almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years in August.
Amazing. Congratulations, brother. That's huge. And you've got 2 children, 8 and 6. So you've got a lot of relationships in your life, along with your clients and everybody that you serve in your business. You've got a lot going on, yet you still take and carve out time to spend it with those who matter most to you. We've already talked about the importance of relationships, how it can help you live longer, find more fulfillment in your life. What do you believe is most important in relationships? And the reason I ask is because I know so many people who go from one relationship to the next, and they're constantly just looking for something to fill a void, but they're not finding that thing to fill it. What's most important in a successful relationship?
From what I've learned is to be the best version of myself. And that is the most important thing for me. And that isn't necessarily just in my relationship. That's just for who I am as a person. So if we go into a relationship feeling a lack, feeling incomplete, we're going to feel that in our relationship. If we go into a relationship feeling good about ourselves, constantly growing, being the best version of ourselves, then your partner will see that, and your partner will want to step up to that as well. And I've learned through the tough times. I've been in a failed relationship. The relationship that I have with my wife isn't perfect. Like, we have a great relationship, but we're constantly learning. We've been through our challenges, and every once in a while we hit a bump in the road. That's just the way relationships are. But what I've learned from that is that there's a growth opportunity for me. And I see that. And I'm like, that's how I can approach this situation differently next time. Or this is where I need to grow as an individual. Maybe I'm lacking self-confidence in a certain area, or maybe my emotional state is not where it needs to be. Maybe I'm not giving off the energy that I need to give off because I'm consumed by something else. So it's an opportunity for me. And I love it, because I'm like, sometimes when a relationship isn't going well, I'm like, what do I need to do? And if you do that, you will grow, and you will be so proud of yourself and enjoy yourself to such a degree that here's where the secret is that it doesn't matter if you're in that relationship or not. And it doesn't bug you if the relationship isn't going well at that moment, because you are good with who you are. Now, if you have extended, like if your relationship is crappy for months and years and stuff, yeah, that's tough. That's tough to suck up. You don't want that. But if you're having a couple of weeks of a bad times or challenging times, and you can still feel good about yourself, you're in the right spot.
I like how you turn it back to you rather than say, oh, what is the other person doing? What can the other person do different? Blame, blame, blame. It's instead, okay, well, what am I doing to maybe foster this environment that both of us are living in? What can I do differently myself personally with my own emotions, my own state of being, in order to improve this environment that I'm in, this relationship that I'm spending time in? It's very introspective, right? And I feel like for you, that comes from years of the self-work that you've done. How can someone who maybe hasn't spent their entire life with the world of personal development and, with meditation, with visualization, how can that person begin to take more of an introspective approach?
It's ultimately asking better questions. So we all have questions that we ask ourselves, both consciously and unconsciously, and we have to identify that. So if you can catch yourself, and I highly encourage people to use a diary or a journal and actually write down things that pop up in your head. And you could do this exercise for a day, you could do this exercise for a week, but write down the questions you constantly ask yourself and what those questions are. And are they empowering you, or are they disempowering you? So a lot of people have, well, the question is, how could that person do that? Doesn't that person know me by now? That person should have known this or whatever. But you have to change those questions and say, what could I have done to communicate more effectively? Where did I lack in this situation? Where can I grow in this situation? And you will commonly have, most likely, a few consistent questions. So if you change those questions, you're going to have a better quality of life. You're going to have a better quality relationship. I've trained myself to go back into a single question that I ask myself. There's two things that I ask myself consistently. A, how do I grow and be better as a result of this? B, how can I make this world a better place as a result of this? So I always ask these questions. And if I ask myself this question, I will always learn as a result, and I will always be able to contribute.
Wow, those are beautiful answers, man. I'm writing down those two questions because I absolutely love those. So how can I grow and be better as a result of this? And how can I make the world a better place as a result of this? Not how can I change the other person, but how can I grow? How can I improve?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's been the core premise of my work, because everything that I've gone through is what I share with other men. And so every learning opportunity that I've had enables me to work with another man because I know somebody else is feeling that way in some way, shape, or form. So I've taken all of my mistakes, all of my challenges, all of my learning and growth, and put it together so I can help other men. That's how it's been able to help me.
Amazing. I wanted to ask you, because I've heard you talk about it many times, masculine and feminine energy. Now, I've heard this out there. I haven't read any books on this. I haven't really dived into this world, so I'm ignorant when it comes to this. So I'm curious as to your approach to someone who doesn't really know about this. But I've been married now for over 4 years. And
Awesome.
and when you say masculine and feminine energy, I'm the masculine energy, she's the feminine energy, right? Now, what's the importance of these two different energies in an intimate relationship, and how does that dynamic of those energies affect the relationship?
So these energies have been talked about for centuries, and we're talking about the the folk tales, the tales that have been told about the dark versus the day. We're talking about yin and yang, for example, yoni and linga, and basically in the Indian tradition, masculine and feminine, which is more of the, you can say, westernized approach, but it's basically two opposite sides, two polar opposites. And so if you think of a coin has to have two sides in order for it to be a coin. And so that's the same thing with energy. It has two sides. One is not better than the other. They both have to complement each other for it to be a whole. That's ultimately what the masculine and feminine energy do, is come together as a whole and bring unity together. The masculine energy, and again, it's about attraction. It's about what a lot of the common term is polarity, meaning that if you have two opposite sides of, just like magnets, they will attract each other. When you have two of the similar energies, they will repel each other. So this is what happens in a relationship. Is there is not necessarily, one person will have more masculine energy, one person will have more feminine energy. In a heterosexual relationship, the man will typically have more masculine, woman will have more feminine, but we all have both masculine and feminine energy within us. So if I define what masculine energy is, the simplest way, which is, I would say it's making it too simplified, but I'm going to try to simplify it for the audience, is masculine energy is very peaceful. It's very still. It's very strong. It's very solid. It's task oriented. It's goal focused, right? If you think about achievement, performance, that's what masculine energy is about. Feminine energy is about flow. It's about connection. It's, you can say, more of the loving type of an energy. It's about variety. It's about creativity. So that's the feminine energy. If you think about feminine women, for example, they're flowing, right? They're graceful. They have that thing about them. If you think about a masculine man, you're thinking about something typically, stereotypically, a little bit more rigid, right? A little bit more solid. So these are the different opposites. And we have, as both men and women, both of these energies. And every man has a different balance. Every woman has a different balance. So it's not like you should have 75% this and 25% that. Everybody is unique to their own spiritual energy. And that is the most important thing to know.
Now, do you believe that in order for a relationship to last, one person must be more on one side masculine and the other more on one side feminine, or can there be an equilibrium there? What are your thoughts there?
I would say yes. So you could have someone with 50-50, or two people with 50-50, for example. You'll most likely never have anybody with 100 and, on one energy and 0 on the other. That's just completely unhealthy, right? They wouldn't even be in a relationship. So the 50-50 is possible, but you would have to be highly trained in that. Both parties would have to be highly trained in their energies and understand them to be able to create that balance. And in Western society, I would say, from my personal experience, that would be very rare. Very rare. So in Western society, for example, and this is natural too, because there's an energy component, but there's a biological component to this as well. So let me explain. Men, on average, can have anywhere up to 100 times more testosterone than a woman. And so that, let's just say, hormone is a tie to masculine energy. So we biologically have more of that energy than a woman does. A woman will feel more oxytocin, for example, especially during childbirth, for example. That is more of a feminine energy because it's about connection. So biologically, the way we've been designed or evolved or created, depending on what your belief is, we are different. Men and women are different. So we will have different levels of energy. And so I do believe because of that, the way we've been developed or created or evolved, that yes, it requires us to have different levels of energy because we attract each other that way.
Should somebody attempt to change that energy, or should they instead find somebody who instead complements their own energy?
That's a question for an individual. Each individual has to ask themselves, do they feel good in their own energy? Do they feel natural with themselves? Because if you take a highly masculine energy man and try to get him to be more feminine, yeah, great. But does he feel good about that? That's ultimately it. And if he doesn't, then you shouldn't force it upon him. But he may have to learn the skills to flex more of his feminine energy when the time is required, when the situation is required, right? This is a challenge. This is where society has gone, because right now we're in a very confusing state because men are being trained to be less masculine and more feminine, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's gone overboard. And women are being trained to be more masculine. And so there's this complete imbalance in society and in relationships right now that's happening. And I don't believe it's healthy. And I've seen the results of that.
Got it. I appreciate you going into that world with me and just shedding some of that information, because it's a topic I've wanted to learn more about. And I think this was a great introduction to that. Let's talk about The Complete Man. Let's talk about your book. Tell us a little bit about it. Who is this book for, and where can we find it?
Sure. I wrote this book in 2020, because I wanted to write a book, and because of COVID, it was a perfect time for me. I locked down. I said, this is what I'm going to do this year, because I saw men struggling. So as soon as it hit, I actually started writing. So the timing was great. And this book is for every man out there. It's for every man out there who wants to perform better, achieve all their goals and aspirations, and have a more fulfilling life. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of women that have been reading this book as well, or buying it for their partners, because they want to get a better understanding of the man in their life or their business partner. So it's been a 50-50 in terms of response that we got from men and women. It's been a great mix. So it will give you the science, the practical steps. This is not a woo-woo book. This is not a motivational book. I do not believe in motivation coming from external. I believe in practical steps, tactics, strategies, and processes for you to be able to get to where you want to be. That's what this book is about. And so it encompasses all areas of a man's life, from your cognitive thinking, basically your mental capacity, to your emotional state, how to manage it, how to make better decisions, how to execute more effectively, how to have more energy, how to have a better relationship, what it actually means to be a father and the importance of it. All of these different elements of a man's life are encompassed in this book. And so it is for every man out there, and even some women out there as well.
Incredible. And where can we find this book?
So you can go to completemanbook.com if you like the physical copy. You can always get it on Amazon or any of the book retailers, or you can get the digital combo, which is the ebook and the audiobook combo. Here's a promo code. You can use a promo code VICTORY75. So victory, the number 75, all one word, by going to completemanaudio.com, and you will get 75% off the digital combo.
Awesome. So everyone listening, for the physical book, go to Amazon, or you can go to completebook.com. I'll have links in the description for you to check out. And if you want the audio and the digital combination, the 75% off, huge deal. Type in Victory 75 is the promo code, and it's completemanaudio.com. Again, the link is in the description. You've heard from this conversation that this is more of an area that you want to dive into, guys. Purdeep, it's been an incredible conversation, my friend. Thanks for diving into all these different areas with us today. And I look forward to reading your book, my friend.
Thank you. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Take care.
What an enlightening conversation with Purdeep Sangha, author of The Complete Man. Again, links are in the description to go check out his book. We talked about everything from visualization and meditation and being the person you want to be and having a vision, masculine energy, feminine energy. We really covered like all sides of the spectrum today, but I think the number one thing I'm going to take away from this is to more consciously visualize exactly who it is I want to be and the lifestyle that I want to live. Because like Purdeep said, we've got to give our brain an end destination. We've got to tell it what we want, because if we don't, it'll find somebody else's goal to help. It'll find all these different other behaviors that might be constructive, but they also could be destructive. So Purdeep, I thank you again, brother, for being here. Everyone, you always ask, how can you support the broadcast? The number one way is to engage with the broadcast. Leave a comment, like it. If you're watching the replay, share this show with one person who could use any of the information that we talked about here today, but only if you found value. If you didn't find value, don't share it. But if you did, just one friend, send them the link and let them enjoy this episode and this broadcast as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.